All right. Good afternoon, everybody. This is the Creative Finance Collective. It's 2 p.m. Arizona time, and that's what we do. We get together, talk about creative finance. Today, it's Sean St. Clair and myself, Andy Fowler. We may have others join. We may not. We don't know. That's always the excitement of the collective. But we're here to talk about creative finance and take questions. So if you have questions, make sure to post them in the chat, and we'll answer questions for as long as we get them. And if we don't get them, we're not. Then we'll move on. So while we wait for some to join and everything, Sean, a non-related thing, but we were talking about this yesterday. The that double header with the Braves and the Mets didn't play out like you were hoping, did it?
Now, well, it wasn't like I was hoping, but like I expected. I kind of assumed that the team that won that first game would not really have much interest in winning the second game. And that's pretty much what happened. So,
Yeah,
yeah, we needed a sweep one way or the other. We didn't get it. And so the Diamondbacks are sitting with all the other teams that didn't make the playoffs. But at least it came to down to the very last, game of the season. So
yeah. The kind of the knife to the heart on the whole thing is you were wondering after the World Series appearance whether this team was a fluke or whether we were going to see something special. And all signs during the season were, well, this team belongs in the playoff. They
yeah,
belonged where they were. This is a good team.
yeah,
And just a month ago, you were thinking that.
yeah. Just a couple of weeks ago, they had a 3 or 4 game lead, and they just played bad down the stretch. I think some injuries caught up to them, and what was it last Sunday? So not this past Sunday, but the Sunday before, they were up 8-0 on the Brewers and let the Brewers come back and win that game. And that was the difference.
Yeah.
Had they won that game, they would they be in the playoffs right now? But they didn't, and they kind of struggled down the stretch with some players getting back from injury and being rusty and stuff, and they just didn't play their best baseball when they needed to.
No. So let's talk a little bit creative finance.
Yeah.
We do have a question. Let me go
Okay.
ahead and read it to you. They must have watched our INREM podcast, which
Mhm.
was about manufactured home investing. But what would I need to do to plan for uh, if I wanted to buy a manufactured home that was not affixed to the real property subto? So
Mm.
buy a property subto, and the manufactured home is not affixed. Can you do that? Yeah, obviously, we're talking Arizona right now. This changes from state to state on what this might look like. Although I'll bet you generally the legal issues pretty much the same. Manufactured homes are usually considered personal property. Real
Yeah.
estate's usually considered real property.
Hmm.
And that's where things go south when people don't appreciate those two things. But this question assumes we know that it's not a fixed. But I love the property as an investment and they're willing to sell. What do I need to be thinking about?
So number one, you know, if the property is or the manufactured home, it's not real property, and so title is actually going to be held by the lender because it's going to be treated basically like a vehicle,
Yeah,
and so
like when
the
you've got the
lender.
car loan, they sit and hold the
Mhm.
title.
Yeah, so the lender is going to hold title. So the question is, you know, you probably can't even register the vehicle in your name. So you may not be able to purchase it subject to, you may have to purchase it on like a lease with an option to purchase. And then if you want to do a subsequent disposition, you need to be very careful of the licensing laws in the state where you're engaging, whether or not you need, say a dealer's license, whether or not you need a dealer finance, a vehicle finance license, even though it's a home, it's treated like a vehicle. So, what kind of licenses do you need if you're going to do a disposition on that? But at the end of the day, it's a lot tougher if it's not affixed.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, wouldn't one of the solutions just go to the buyer and have them affix it if they can?
Yeah, but I don't know that you can if the title is still held with the lender.
Oh, true. Yeah. So,
Mm-hmm.
well, and even if you could, you would want to take note of the security instruments too, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and so, all right, good question. So we have another question. Before I read it, if you're just not joining us, this is the Creative Finance Collective. You should be able to watch this and engage with this program on YouTube, X, or Facebook. So we have a Facebook question. If you're watching us from another platform that's not YouTube, YouTube's one of the easiest places to engage with this content. We have a barcode at the top that takes you to our YouTube channel where you can subscribe, and we'd appreciate that. But our question from a Facebook viewer is: if I sell a property subto in Georgia on an installment contract, can I refinance the first position mortgage to increase cash flow? Well, I can start by saying we're not Georgia lawyers, but Sean, what are your thoughts?
So there's what the law provides and what a title company or lender will do, and they're not going to always be the same thing. So there's a legal doctrine of equitable subordination, which basically says, hey, if I have a first position mortgage followed by a recorded land contract, and I go and I get another loan that pays off the first position mortgage, then that loan basically gets to jump the land contract and go up to the first under that equitable subrogation document. The problem is a lender is not going to go for that. You would basically have to, and no title company is going to insure that loan. So, from a practical side of things, they're like, I don't want to rely upon some legal doctrine. I want, when I look at the public record, to basically be able to say, I'm in first position. But when you look at the time order of priority, you would say, well, wait a minute, the land contract is ahead of the loan because the loan was recorded after the land contract.
Mm-hmm.
Once again, you can rely upon that doctrine, but lenders aren't going to want to rely upon a court doctrine, nor is a title company. So what you have to do is see if the purchaser will subordinate and execute a subordination of their interest to the new lender. And if you can do that, then and you should be able to then refinance that first.
What would that process even look like to do that? Lots of time on the phone?
Yeah, so you basically, and whether or not a lender would still do it, I don't know. But
Yeah.
if I were, say, in-house counsel for the lender, I'd be like, yeah, that's fine. Do we have a subordination and consent to the loan? Yeah. Okay. Let's record the subordination. Then that puts us in first position and we're all good. Or, if the land contract, if you were fortunate enough to put in the land contract, the language to the effect of that you can refinance the first, and that the land contract subordinate to any subsequent financing that pays off the first position loan. If that's in there, then you might be able to do it. But you have to look at the language of the land contract, and you probably need the purchaser to execute a subordination agreement, which basically consents to the loan and agrees that the land contract will be, in a junior position to that of the loan.
All right. Good information. All right. If you're just not joining us, this is the Creative Finance Collective. We're taking questions about creative financing. So if you have those questions, now's the time to post them because we'll be on as long as we have questions to take. Otherwise, we'll just shut it down and move on. Sean, I noticed kind of our last Creative Finance Collective, we were talking about the possibility of the Federal Reserve reducing interest rates, and they did that, and they did it more aggressively than a lot of people thought. They did it by a half basis point. Um, what's funny is mortgage rates, the average mortgage rate on a 30-year fixed actually jumped up a little bit after that from its new lows. But that's something else going on in the background, at least with regard to interest rates and what that might mean for the real estate market, what that might mean for, um, the market as a whole. But I think, as we've discussed, we're not gonna see rates probably go to 0, and that, and given that dynamic, creative finance is probably here to stay. It made me wonder at what point, and I wonder if you've started to see this at all. My guess is I doubt it, but I had a conversation with somebody, and you keep hearing the younger generation talk about housing affordability and how expensive it really is, and how
Mhm.
impossible it feels like for some young kid in their early 20s to even conceive of affording a house right now. Makes me wonder when something like creative finance starts to go a little bit more mainstream. Are you really do you or have you really seen any clients that are non-investors attempting to do this yet?
Not that have come to me recently. I've had them in the past. Uh, what I have seen a lot of more recently is family members doing it.
Hmm. What do you mean?
Yeah, so mom and dad. I even saw daughter
Like
and
selling to
son-in-law,
kid?
or vice versa. Yeah,
Or
so
vice
mom
versa?
and dad have a property. They have a low interest rate loan. They're ready to do something else. Their kids don't have property, don't own real estate. They want their kids to be able to own real estate, and so they then do. They say, okay, well, I'll carry the loan for you and keep my existing loan in place.
Mhm.
And they do it. And they give them, reasonable loan terms where they're still making a few bucks on the whole deal, but, it's much more affordable. Uh, and then I saw one where the daughter and son-in-law owned a property, and they wanted the parents. It was an investment property, but the parents wanted to move to be closer to them, and that's where the property was. So they're like, "Oh, why don't you just um, buy this from us and live here?" And they did, and so they then did a subject to on that. So I've seen that. Now, the one where the parents sold it to the children, guess what? Subject to all day long, and the lender can't do anything about it. Because of the Garn St. Germain. You can put children on title to real estate without violating the due on sale clause.
Well, that
And
I was
so,
yeah, well,
yeah,
I hadn't thought of that, but I was, thinking even if it did trigger the due on sale clause, having your family involved makes it a lot easier dynamic to try to resolve
yeah,
that, you know what I mean? But,
right. Now, the daughter and son-in-law to parents isn't
exempt.
exempt, so that could be an issue. But yeah, then it's easily worked out. But as far as the parents to child, it works out.
Mhm.
So, what's interesting about that is that's a good way for your, kids to be able to basically take on and handle property, because presumably parents that are older have more earning power, more resources. They can go and buy another house, sell their house to their kids, who then, own a house, can build, wealth, equity, and still reap the benefits of that low interest rate loan. Maybe pay a little higher interest to the parents to help them out with their new payment, whatever. Um,
Mhm.
but that's a really, to me, a strategy that really isn't being used. It should be, because honestly, it's not an issue. There is no due on sale. You can do it all day long and not have a problem. So
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, it makes you wonder, geez, if you can be exempt from the due on sale clause. This is, yeah, there's a huge benefit. In fact, I was just with somebody. They weren't talking about creative finance at all, but we were talking about housing affordability. And the gentleman I was talking to said, I'm not a multimillionaire. I don't have tons of money that I can leave my kids, but maybe one of the things that I can do is help them get into their first house,
yeah,
and gee whiz, creative finance would be just a no-brainer way to do that.
yeah. You have a house with a low interest rate loan, and you want your kids to be able to afford a house, and assuming
And what
they
are
live
you,
in
of
the
course,
area,
doing simultaneously? Usually you're trying to downsize anyway.
right? Yeah, exactly.
All right. Call my kids up.
Interesting. Yeah, I see a website blog in my future.
I know. This is like, I wonder how we could make this kind of an estate planning technique,
Yeah,
you know? Um,
exactly.
Interesting. All right. Well, we've gotten all the questions so far. We had some good questions, but we haven't received any others. So if you're watching, we appreciate you watching. Make sure to join us Tuesday mornings at 10 a.m. Arizona time for the Interim Podcast, and then every Tuesday at 2:00 p.m. we do the Creative Finance Collective. So it's important that you show up and bring your questions, and we'll answer those. I know we changed the show time for daylight savings. That's probably coming up here pretty soon.
The first weekend in November.
First week, okay. So
Yeah,
first
that's
weekend in
late. And normally it's sometime middle October, late October, but I don't know why it's later this year, but it's the first weekend in November. So that first Sunday, obviously Arizona doesn't change. Wisconsin Central Time changes, and for our folks in Texas and Alabama and Florida, their times are going to change as well.
Yeah. So when we get to that, we'll change the time of the collective.
Well, no, the collective stays the same. It just is going to be different Arizona time.
I gotcha. It'll go to 3:00 Arizona time.
Yes, and then it will be still remain 4 o'clock Central.
Everywhere else. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. With that, make sure to join us next Tuesday, 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. And we'll plan on seeing everybody then.